This video lesson is all about how to use Excel to make bar and line graphs. Now obviously we went through those lessons in class where we made bar and line graphs by hands from charts and tables that we had, and you've drafted your graphs for the Luxury Has Its Price project. The purpose of this one is to show how Excel can make that process a little bit easier, how it can make some really nice graphs, but it is important that we know how to make those kind of graphs by hand so we can double check the graph that we get from Excel, that it is in fact the kind of graph that we want, and it does look like it wants. Technology obviously does exactly what we tell it to, and if we don't format it exactly the way that Excel wants us to, then some strange looking graphs can come out. So when I switch to my Excel, what you're going to see is the PC version of Excel. Most of you use Macs in the class, so I have a few screenshots of Macs about how to find the things I'm talking about in Excel, at least for my PC Excel. So hopefully you should be able to find those different things without too much trouble. So first let's take a look at what Excel looks like on a Mac. This is a screenshot from a version of Excel, and it looks different. This is an older version. In part I have the older version here because it really highlights these different tabs that we have here. Now not every one of these tabs is still present on the Mac version. In fact, the version looks a whole lot more like this, which is a little bit fuzzy, I know. But it just has some potential tabs here, and one of those tabs is charts. If you see the tab that says charts, not the ones up at the top of the screen up in the Apple bar, but down in Excel itself, you'll see all of these different options for things that you can make as charts. So now let's switch to the PC version because this is where it starts to become fairly similar. So this is the PC version of Excel. This is what I see when I actually use Excel. And for me, I'm going to have to go to a few different things. So if you are on a PC at some point and need to use Excel to make graphs, in the newest versions, where you're going to go to is this place up here, this tab that's Insert, and then all of the charts are here also. Now for me to get there, I have to open up all of the charts, and you'll see that in this row here you have basically the same options for charts that we have in the Mac version underneath the charts tab with all of those buttons. And so a column chart is our standard bar graph. It's the vertical bar graph. A line graph is obviously what it is, and there's lots of different options here. We have pie charts, which are really used for percents, and we'll get to those a little bit later in the year. We have what they call bar graphs, which are horizontal bars, though obviously we can use them as vertical ones too. And we have a bunch of other different types of charts that you can sort of click around with and explore on your own. But before we actually get into any of those charts, we have to talk about how Excel actually makes charts. And to make charts, Excel uses columns. So let's take a look at this table that we had from the actual bar graph lesson. And this one should be familiar. It's the one that shows the number of school days per year in various different countries. We decided in class that this would probably be most appropriate to use a bar graph for. So let's use Excel to create a bar graph for this data. Now the way that this table is set up, where we have a column of countries, and we have a column of school days that corresponds to those countries, this is actually the way that Excel reads data when it comes to making a bar graph. So in Excel, we're going to format it almost exactly like this. As you can see, in Excel, I've created a new version of the table right here. You can't see the entire South Korea name there, so let's do that. We've got one column that's labeled countries, has all of our countries on it, one column that's labeled school days, and has all of our lists for school days there. So this contains all of the information that Excel needs to make the graph. So let's actually make this bar graph, or set it up, and see how Excel reads all of these different parts. So we'll go up here, I'll go into my charts. We're going to make a bar graph, so I'm going to choose column because that's what we're familiar with. And now that we have some data that's selected, you can see that there are different types of graphs that we can make. This is our basic, what we call a clustered column, which is just a regular bar graph, some that are just blue bars, some that have lots of colored bars. Stacked columns are not really things that we're going to talk about in 6th grade. You may talk about them later. We have some 3D versions of the same things. And you can sort of click around to see what kind of charts might be possible. I'm going to select this colored basic bar graph. And so now that it's actually in Excel, let's take a look back at that table and see what we see. The chart here is looking for a title. We can actually double click on it and give the chart a title. We haven't given it one at all so far, but that's all right for the moment. Like I said, we can double click and make one. Here we see the left hand column is all of the school days by country, and then we have all of the numbers of school days off across the side. Now because this is a little bit different because all of the bars are different colors, and so we needed a key to show which country was which. And so let's see if we can put in a chart that looks more like the bar graphs that we're used to seeing. That will be something that looks like that. And it'll replace the chart, or actually it'll put another chart, I believe. Nope, it replaces it with something that's more familiar. All of the countries on the bottom, a key to show what everything means, and then a title, which again, we can double click and change. So as you can see, it sort of ignored the country title there, but that's all right because we can. This is enough information to know what's going on. So that's all of the information that Excel uses to create a bar graph. Now, as far as a line graph is concerned, I'm not sure whether we actually got to see this chart as we were in that lesson, but what we can see is the number of students that were enrolled at a school over various different years. Now, this is a graph that is just made for line graphs because we're looking at data over a certain amount of time. We have all of the years in the left-hand column. We have the students in the right-hand column. And so the format for creating a line graph in Excel is very similar to that for creating a bar graph. Here we've got our two columns, one for the year, one for students. Again, we're going to highlight everything by just clicking into one corner and dragging it down to the end, then go up into our charts, and this time we're going to select something from the line graph. And then when we click line, we have lots of different options here too, and we really need to pay attention to the labels on the left-hand side of the graph. As you can see, this one goes all the way from 0 to 2,500, and none of our data actually goes there. It's a different type of line graph, but this one over here on the right actually does. Then we have lots of different things. We have stacked lines, which we would be able to see on the other chart here. If we had another column of data, we have another stacked line, which is out of percentages. We have lines with markers that allow us to see where each data point is with a little bit of precision, though it's hard to tell unless we see the chart with it. Let's go at this one. I'm going to click this graph. We're going to take a look at it in Excel. So here you can see that Excel hasn't quite chosen the title, right? We can change this to students over time. But here we have the years. And here we have the students in each year. And here we have the graph. Now this should make sense to us because the students are increasing each year, so the graph should be increasing. But in line graphs, in bar graphs, in those basic kinds of charts, Excel really operates from this column-based table format, sort of like what we were looking at when we were making them. And so for your actual homework tonight, what I'm going to ask you to do is take the data into the table on the right. If you're going to put it into Excel, you're going to use that data and the format of the table, however you decide to do it, to create either a bar or a line graph. Be prepared to defend why you chose a bar or a line graph, depending on what you do choose. And then in that same Excel sheet, you're going to use the Excel program to calculate the mean, median, and mode of the data that you see. So go ahead before this video ends, pause the video so you can see the data, and we'll see you the next time that we have class.